Hello, I'm Dr. Andrew Chappell, and welcome to this webinar that I'm going to do today on progressing your training. Now, with any of these webinars that I do and the information that I disseminate to you all, if you find this information useful, then please do not hesitate to get in touch with us here at ProPrep Coaching if you think we can help you and get you towards your goals. We'd love to hear from you. Now, without any further ado, let's get on with the webinar. Okay, so training progress. This is a topic that I thought I would do based on the fact that people find it more difficult than you would imagine they would to progress their training, to understand the concepts of how to make progress week in, week out. And I felt there was a need for this because of my experience of people perhaps sticking too rigidly to the plans or not progressing their progress, or rather not progressing with their training quite as much as they otherwise should have. So I thought I'd do a webinar on this particular one. Now on here is the classic super compensation model you can see at the top here. And the idea is that this black line you can see across the bottom here, this represents the natural state of things, or what we call homeostasis. And once we do a training session, you can see here indicated in the white arrows coming down, the dotted line represents the change in the status quo or the homeostasis over time, and that's the improvement in fitness. And you can see this wiggly line here represents the adaptations to exercise and the recovery that takes place during this, and that's how we get an increase in fitness. And this all largely comes down to the concept of progressive overload at the end of the day. Okay, like I said at the start, if you think we can help you here at ProPrep Coaching, don't hesitate to get in touch. Myself and my partner, along with our coaches, are evidence-based. We base all of our strategies around scientific research, and we're very experienced coaches at helping people get to the stage. Here's just a few of the clients that I've helped down the years get ready for various different competitions. We help clients across all divisions, all criteria, all federations as well. These are some particularly good ones here at World Championships a few years back. Okay, so what we're going to talk about in this particular webinar is we're going to talk about the factors which influence muscle growth, different ways to improve muscle mass, so again, based on the factors that influence growth, how to take responsibility for your own training, and how you should progress your training. Okay, so this is Milo's Bill here, along with a popular slogan that you're going to see in the gym, which is, if it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. In fact, I trained in a gym the other day, they're called Extreme, and they had this painted across the wall in the gym, and it must have been about 20 foot high, and it's extremely true. So if you're not familiar with the story of Milo, then it's basically sort of a great example of progressive overload. So Milo starts out as a teenager and he's carrying his calf on his shoulder every single day, and then as he grows, so does the bull grow, and because of that, the bull gets progressively heavier, and he has to develop the muscle mass over time to be able to carry the bull from there. And because it grows a little bit day by day by day, he gets a little bit more muscular day by day by day until he's got the strength to lift a full-blown bull over his head. Thus, filling in with that adage that if it doesn't challenge you, then it won't change you. So he implements progressive overload throughout his career, and he gets extremely muscular doing that. Now, muscle mass, hypertrophy itself, it's based on a number of different factors, and there's a lot of different ways in which you can build muscle mass. And because there's a lot of different ways you can build muscle mass, a lot of it works. A lot of the different training strategies and techniques which are out there are effective at helping you get to where you want to be. But building muscle mass is largely based on three different things. It's metabolic stress, so that means the build-up of these factors here. So we've got lactic acid, we've got the exhaustion of phosphates, the exhaustion of muscle glycogen, the build-up of H plus ions within the muscles, or the pump as we call it. You've got the exercise-induced swelling which takes place, the hypoxic state, so the lack of oxygen getting to a muscle, and the build-up of reactive oxygen species within the muscle, so oxidative damage from here as well. We've also got muscle damage, which contributes towards the fact that we get adaptation has to take place. And then the other thing as well, of course, is mechanical tension. So just placing loads on the muscle all contribute towards muscle hypertrophy at the end of the day. And as I've said before, because it's a combination of these different factors, they all contribute towards muscle hypertrophy, and we can train in lots of different ways because of that. Strength is slightly different. We do need neurological adaptations taking place here, and that's probably why it responds well to a slightly different stimulus, e.g. frequency seems to work quite well for strength training. But again, lifting more loads contributes towards hypertrophy as well. So you've got this model here. So you've got metabolic stress, muscle damage, mechanical tension, and it means that training is multifaceted in terms of how we can add muscle mass. And there are some factors that we can manipulate around exercise to maximize how much muscle that we can add. And these are all factors which can progress as well at the same time. So we can manipulate the frequency. So if you go from 1 time per week training your biceps to 2 times to 3 times to 4 times, there's obviously a ceiling on the amount of times that you can do it. But that's usually offset with the intensity, so the percentage of your maximum effort that you can do. And you can quantify that in different ways. You can use things like percentages of your 1 rep max. You can use RPE scales, so we call that rate of perceived exertion. Or you can progress using things like reps in reserve. So we try and maximize frequency offset against intensity. So if frequency is high, intensity's got to be low, otherwise we get exhausted. Likewise, if intensity is high, then frequency tends to be low because we need to recover so that we can then make adaptations from the exercise session as well. There is a concept around the maximum amount of volume that you can recover from. So again, that's frequency as well. But it does mean that if we want to increase our maximum recoverable volume, then we have to train that as concept as well. So just those 2 concepts alone, you can see how they can contribute towards progression. We've got time. So this is a thing here. You can change the amount of time you spend resting between sets. That will induce more metabolic damage if you have short rest periods. If you've got long rest periods, useful for strength training, that allows you to obviously spend more time recovering, and then you should be able to do a little bit better for the strength training. And then we've got the type of exercise that we're doing as well. So that's exercise selection. You can go from progressively easier exercises to much more complicated movements as well. You can also change the modality as well. So we can change things like the type of aerobic exercise we're doing or the type of anaerobic exercise that we're potentially doing as well. And again, I said this at the start, but this is our classic supercompensation model. So we always want to be supercompensating because that means that we're able to add muscle mass. And I'm just going to talk through this graphic with you. But what you've got here is you've got this straight line here represents the normal state of affairs, homeostasis. So it's the same as at the bottom here. This is the initial fitness on this line here. And what we do is we start off, we do a training session and these 2 dotted lines here, and that affects us negatively in terms of our body. So homeostasis is disrupted. We've used phosphates, we've used fuel, we've ended up in a situation whereby the body's a little bit damaged. We then need a period of time to recover from that. And because the body adapts, then our new fitness level starts up here. So we're a little bit stronger than we were the last time because our muscle fibers have to be built up to compensate for the type of exercise we do. Now, if we don't do any other exercise, what will happen over time is that level will just go back down to being the initial level of fitness because we don't need to be any stronger, and the body's very adaptive like that. However, we do an hour training session at an appropriate window of time, then what will happen, we get an hour recovery phase, takes place, new supercompensation, and our fitness goes up again. And that's that dotted line that you see from here. If the exercise bouts are too close together or too far apart, then what happens is you can end up in a supercompensation negative phase, and that's whereby we've done too much and actually our fitness decreases. If the exercise sessions are not stimulating enough, then actually we never progress with the line because we're never doing anything challenging enough to cause a new reset in physical fitness. So hopefully that all makes sense from here. So there's lots of things, like I said, you can manipulate. So here's a good example of this. This is one of my clients, and this is the total amount of weight that she's lifted over a 5-week block, you can see here. So Week 1 is the green, week 2 is the yellow, week 3 is the red. Week 4, we did what's called a deload, so we reduced the volume so she could recover a little bit. And then week 5 is the orange here. So you can see progressively over time she managed to accumulate more total weight from session to session. So some exercises she was doing within her session improved. You can see on the right hand side here what the workouts look like over the course of the week, and you can see where she's improving in some sessions compared to other ones. So you can progress quite nicely by both manipulating the total amount of load that you lift over the course of a week or within individual sessions, alongside how much you're lifting on individual exercises. And the reason we'd like to talk about loads and intensity is because it's one of the most obvious and easiest ways to progress. But it doesn't always come down to the amount of weight that you lift. Down at the bottom here, this graph, this represents the deloading phenomenon you can see here. So we do several weeks lifting weights, trying to progress, supercompensating. We have a week where we lift a little bit lower to recover. That resets things. We usually start at a phase which is probably similar to the level we were at a week before or 2 weeks before, and then we can progress beyond in a stepwise manner. But the aim is, as you can see here, to try and increase the amount lifted week on week on week. Now, the major problem that we come up against when working with clients, or at least I often see, is that people are unsure how to manipulate intensity and volume to elicit that adaptive response. They end up doing the same workouts all the time. They end up with the same intensity and there's no progressive overload. They just think, okay, I've got my workout plan. I'm lifting at X percentage of warm out max. I'm just going to keep doing it week in, week out. Or they overcomplicate things. They stick rigidly to a plan without using any of their initiative at all. They don't listen to their body. They end up getting injured because they're not reducing volumes when they need to, or loads. And they progress slower than they should because they just don't challenge themselves at all. And they can end up having no fun because they end up sticking rigidly to things. Because we all started working out initially because we loved the challenge and things like that. But people can get stuck in a rut of thinking that they need to do everything exactly as written, and they won't step out the realms of challenging themselves because out of what is written, sorry, rather than challenging themselves from time to time. So you don't have any fun when you work out. So these things are problems. The other thing that can happen is people become obsessed with pursuing what is optimal or trying to pursue what is perfect. And they place too much on single sets, or they overthink every single decision, and they become paralyzed by an inability to think outside the box. They've got so much knowledge sometimes that it becomes difficult for them to take a look at the bigger picture. So that concept I showed you earlier on of just increasing the amount of loads from week to week to week, some people might get stuck in a situation whereby they don't improve on a single exercise, so they'll not progress anything else in the session because they don't think they've deserved that progression yet, or they get too caught up on losing reps here and there on single exercises. And this will become apparent what I'm talking about later on. The other thing is people sort of don't appreciate that learning to use your initiative or thinking outside the box takes time. So this is a classic example here of a radar plot, and you can see that over time the athlete improves. So to get to the sort of world-class level, we can't expect an athlete to know all these different aspects about muscle mass, psychology, flexibility, nutrition, peer presentation, power, the analytics and strength from the get-go. That takes time to develop, and that's why we're ultimately looking at these this little presentation here. Okay, so first example here of how to progress your training. First example here, this is what I'd call the slow and rigid progress. This is someone that's probably spending too much time overly concerned with minutiae and minute details. So you can definitely progress like this, and it'll work, but I think you're going to find that you get very slow results doing this sort of thing. So you can see, got an example here just of the bench press, and it could be any exercise, and it could be the full session if you like, but person does 100 kilograms, 3 sets, one set's at 8, and they decide, okay, next week I've got to get my 3 sets of 10 before I progress. And then they get 9 on the last set, they go to the final week and they've got 3 sets at 10, they finally managed to do it, and they've said, right, okay, now I'm going to up my weight, I'm going to increase things from there. And that's fine. You can train like that if you want. However, in my experience, what's likely to be more successful is if you train much more in your initiative and you do things like this, because you'll otherwise progress at snail pace. Here's a different example. So the person does the same thing first week, they get the last set, they lose a couple of reps, but it's no big deal. They say, right, okay, let's try 102.5 next week. They then go set 1, 10, set 2, 9, set 3, 6, but they did a little rest pause, they tried something out, just had a go at something. They say, do you know what, I'm going to try 105 next week. First set 10, second set 8, third set 5, so not great, losing some reps here, but certainly the first 2 sets, still working within a hypertrophy rep range for sure. And then they actually tested some of it. They're like, okay, well, let's just see how strong I am. Give themselves a rest, and they did 110. So the confidence has gone quite up. So you can see already, after 3 weeks, you've got one person who's lifting much more weight than the person who was sticking rigidly to their approach. By week 12, you see things like this. Person who's working rigidly, 105 kilograms, they decide, okay, I'm not going to progress off 105 kilograms until I can get the 3 sets of that. You get the second example, you've got someone who's managed to get up to 112.5 kilograms. So they're much stronger and they've probably got much more muscle mass too. Both of them also have improved their 1 rep max, but you can see who's got the higher 1 rep max. Now, it's okay to drop reps here and there for the sake of trying to progress. You don't always have to hit every set perfectly with the rep range bang on. It's also okay to implement advanced training techniques. The big thing is, though, you don't want to overdo it. You just have to check with the coach or with yourself about the principles of the training program as to when it makes sense to do that. And we're going to implement advanced training techniques. Probably 3 is the maximum you're going to probably want to do within a session. So that includes things like drop sets, supersets, giant sets. Other ways you can progress, you don't always have to base it around the amount of weight you lift. You can do it by manipulating rep ranges. And this is a good point attesting to what I said earlier on. So, okay, a person's working at the 10 rep range. If they drop down to 8 reps, they're still well and truly working within the hypertrophy rep range, you can see here. In fact, even dropping down to 6 reps, they're still hitting hypertrophy rep ranges. It's just they're starting to get diminishing returns from that hypertrophy. They're starting to move more into a strength zone from them. Equally, the same is true with muscular endurance. If you're trying to get 20 reps and you only manage 14 or 15, it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world at all. You can still get a lot of progression working at that if you've managed to get a couple of sets in within the desired rep range that you wanted. It's all right. Rest periods, I talked about these a little bit. You can definitely manipulate these, and you can really increase the intensity of a workout by having shorter shorter intraset rest periods. You can really make it much more demanding on your central nervous system. You can really induce a lot of metabolic stress if you want to manipulate the rest periods. So up above, we've got classical rest periods that you want to take, depending on what you're trying to achieve. This is extremely useful for hypertrophy. Not so good if you're looking at maybe strength and power training, where you want to take longer rest periods, but if you want to really get a great pump and exhaust the muscle and get a lot of metabolic stress going on there, which we know is a great way to build muscle mass, then rest period manipulations are good ways to go about it. So you can see here's some nice examples. So we've got our first one again. You can see we've got 100 kilograms. We've managed 3 sets of 10, and we said, right, let's go shorter rest next week. Okay, so we've gone from 3 minutes rest down to 2 minutes rest, and you can see the reps have dropped, but actually still not lost a whole lot in terms of total reps, but you're managing to do it at a shorter rest period, so you're getting fitter, and at the same time, you're actually managing to get the workout done a little bit quicker. Same example here again below. So we've stuck with the rest periods here and decided, you know what, let's try and do more reps. So now we can do 12, we can do 11 on there with our 2 minute rest. So again, you can see the total amount we're moving within the session is actually increasing in a shorter period of time. So we're doing more work and we're becoming much more efficient at it as well. And this is a really nice way to progress. And you can imagine you maybe set yourself a threshold, which is okay. Once I can do 15 reps of that 100 kilograms, it's probably the time to up the weight because I'm starting to move away from that hypertrophy rep range that I really want to, because it's starting to become ineffective. I want to really probably work a little bit more in this direction, and 15 is going to be my cut-off point from there. Okay, in terms of advanced training techniques, as I said, 2 to 3 per session probably makes sense. You can talk to your coaching team and say, okay, guys, what makes sense for me to include within these sessions? Can I put 1 or 2 in? And these things can be a lot of fun and it can make things really challenging. It's just worth thinking about what ones you want to implement within the training session, depending on the goal, because I've sort of characterized some of these things here as to what makes more sense from an endurance or hypertrophy or a strength perspective on here. And there's lots of things you can do in here. This is not a exhaustive list of different ways to progress. The only problem with using these advanced training techniques is that it's difficult to always track progress when you're implementing them, because they often change from week to week in terms of which ones you might implement, or sometimes how you progress depending on what you lifted in prior sets as to when you implement them. So that's the only thing I'd say about that. Okay, reflecting on this, the big thing I would just say to you is, where do you need to up your game? What can you do to progress that you're maybe not thought about? Reflect on those things and have a lot of fun with your working out. Final thing to say, once again, guys, is if you found this useful, please don't hesitate to get in touch. Please check us out and check out our website at ProPrepCoaching.com. We've worked with lots of athletes down the years and we'd love to hear from you. Final thing to just say is thank you very much for your attention. I'm Dr. Andrew Chappell. I hope you find this useful. And like I say, once again, I look forward to hearing from you potentially. I hope you find this webinar useful. Ciao, ciao.